Hello and welcome to this video where we're going to be taking a look at track presets, which is a function which is available on all versions of Cubase, although the number of presets you have available will depend on what content, etc. you've got available to you. It's an interesting feature, quite nice, but definitely not perfect, but it's certainly something that can help you work much more quickly, particularly if you often use the same kind of settings across multiple projects, etc. It's like a micro version of a template, really. So with no further ado, let's get into it and take a look. So probably your first interface with track presets is going to be when you click up here in Cubase. So you can see it says use track preset. It's also, if you go to project, add track, using track preset, all the same thing. On the right click menu, they all take you to the same destinations. So I'm going to click that, and here you get the typical Steinberg preset interface, which has got all this ability to filter things via logical or attributes, etc. And here we have all of them that are available, which for me is 7,399. I know on this same machine, if I load up Cubase AI, I get a lower number, but the system will be the same generally. So there are different types available, and you can actually narrow them down here. So we can see that track presets for audio are available here. Instrument track presets, MIDI ones, multis, and then sampler, and VST preset, which is the most common one. So that's going to be the one that you probably see the most from. You can see here we've got over 6,500 here. So let's just filter that down a little more, not via this part here, but actually by picking some kind of parameters we actually might be interested in. So let's pick drums and percussion and then say analog, etc. So this will be looking very familiar to you if you've ever loaded up a preset, but the slightly more interesting thing is that this is looking across multiple instruments. So in the case of this particular choice, we're looking at Groove Agent, Hallian Sonic, and Retrolog, all of whom have sounds which are described as drums and percussion and analog. So you might want to then narrow it down. So let's see what Retrolog's got to offer us. So you can see we've got these different drums, and we can load them up. So this is like a meta patch choice in this case. So we could just load this up, and you wouldn't see anything different. So if I load that up, this is just a standard instrument track. If I play it on the keyboard, we can see we've got a kick, but in this case, it's being played on Retrolog. So nothing too exciting there. So if that's all track presets have to offer, it's probably a bit underwhelming. It's kind of nice that you can pick across multiple instruments, but that's not really that exciting. But there's more to it than that. So the first thing you may have noticed is that it's available in different track types. So let's go back and have a look at some of the audio ones, because they're probably the most interesting sonically. So by clicking track preset audio, we filter it down to just to those, and you can see there's 447 available on my computer, and some of them are reasonably well named, but some of them maybe need a bit more examination to find out what they actually are. Now, the issue with this, which we will find a workaround for this later on, is that this is just audio settings. So if we load up Alone in the Streets, if we take a look at the channel settings, we can see that we've got a few effects already set up, etc. And sometimes you will have channel strip settings, not in this particular case, but often there will be, and also EQ settings. So all of those things can be available in there. So let's try loading up a different one. Now, you don't have to create a new track. You can just load up from an existing channel. So this is the first thing. You can go to load track preset. This always ends up on the wrong side of my screen. And then let's load up something else. So let's try and see what Acid Drum Loop has got to offer us. And in this case, we can see it's got different choice of effects. Again, nothing on the channel strip and equalizer. And now let's load up Alan Morgan Epic Guitar Pop, and we can see that the strip is active. We've got Roomworks delay as well, and we've got EQ, and the order of the channel strip has been altered from the default. So normally the EQ would be here, etc. and we've got EQ. So you can see you can have quite a few settings in there, and that's probably the key to this, as we will see later on. But the issue with these is auditioning them, if you haven't got audio present, can be a little bit long-winded. So it's typically best to create some audio and then audition the track presets. So that's what we're going to do now. So now I've loaded up some audio, and here we have the sample loop, which is from the Loopmaster's Welcome Sample Pack, without anything on it. And to load up a track preset, we can just click up here, click Load Track Preset, and then let's pick something which hopefully will do the trick. So we'll pick guitar, and we can see here all of the audio ones which are marked as being suitable for guitar are present. So that's only 22 in this case. Now, you may well find that some of these which aren't marked as being guitar are suitable. There's much more to it than this, but this will hopefully give you something sensible. So let's just see what Spacious Pop sounds like. And you can see it gets loaded up straight away. And if we play it, we're getting that nice delayed sound, etc. So we've got phaser, reverb and delay on here, as well as some channel strip settings. But you can leave that running and then audition these just by single clicking. They get loaded up. So actually, I'm going to stick with the Spacious Pop, but we can see it's really quick and easy to audition all these settings, and then once you're happy, you can then fine-tune them. Now, it's definitely the case that you will need to fine-tune these. You know, as with all presets, there can be plenty you can learn from them, and you can find things new and exciting and inspirational, but it's never a great idea just to leave them, because it's really unlikely that the EQ is going to be exactly right for your particular sample or recording that you're putting through it, and that the effects, settings, etc. are going to be exactly right. So there's nearly always some tweaking that you can do that can improve the sound. And remember, obviously, if you do make a complete pig's ear of it, as we all do sometimes, you can just load up the track preset again and you'll be back to where you started. So don't be afraid to experiment, really mess things up, because you can get it back pretty much straight away. So that's the audio side of using these track presets, but there is more to it than this. So one of the things which is slightly frustrating is the situation where you've got an instrument track, but you want to load up these kind of effects from a track preset. So let's take a look at that happening. So here I'm going to add Halion Sonic SE. And then just load up the alto glockenspiel sound. It's very jolly. So obviously that has got some effect sounds in there built into it, but we're not going to worry about that. We're just going to try and change it. Now, the issue you may have is we click Edit Channel Settings, as you would expect. We go to Load Track Preset, and we say, I want that Alan Morgan one again. So I'm going to put AM in there, and we see, we've seen 4,537 presets, but none of those are the one that we want. And the reason is that this will only load up instrument track presets. That doesn't include audio, even though we have an audio track effectively present after the instrument track. So this is something which I found a little bit annoying. So there is a workaround for it. So that's what I've come up with, and that's what we're going to look at in this section here. And the workaround is, if you've got your instrument track, so let's just call this Glock to make things a little clearer. What you do is you add a group channel just to the track in question. So we're going to go to the mixer, right click or two finger tap here, and then add group channel to selected channel. So just to this one, and I'm going to call it Glock Group. So there's our Glock group. Now, handily, these are classed as audio tracks. So if I open up channel settings there, load a track preset for that. Now we can see that the Alan Morgan sounds in question are appearing here. So we can see we've got those 22 guitar sounds. We can open that up by clearing this out, but this is definitely the audio side of things. We can see we're getting those track presets for audio there. And now we can pick whichever one we want. If we enable monitoring on our original MIDI or instrument track, we can play it and hear this in real time. So we can then start auditioning these live. So again, I'll move the window over, and so there's room country, depth rock, etc. So by using a group track, effectively giving you an audio track tagged onto the end of your instrument track, then you can start playing around with these presets. So we can find if overheads works well. And you can experiment with those to your heart's desire. So let's say we decided we did like depth rock. And we've done a bit of tweaking to that. Let's say we want to remove that group track from it because we can end up with real complication there. It is actually easy to do. So once you've decided these are the sounds for you, it's easy for us to then put those back on the channel in question. And we can do that again in the mixer. So all we need to do is to go to the group track. So here's our group track here, and we can copy first selected channel settings here, which is Command or Control C. And then we go to our actual Glock track. So we can see at the moment there's no inserts, EQ or strip, etc. set up on there. Select that, and then we paste. Again, I'm going to do it from the menu so you can see it, but it would just be Control or Command V. And you see it changes. Now, it's changed all those, and also it's changed the output to stereo out, which is what we want. We don't want to go through the Glock group, so we'll hear now. We've still got those effects on there. We can see all the effects and the EQ are on there, and any channel strip settings as well. All of that's been carried over, and now we can just remove our temporary Glock group once we're done. So in terms of using presets, that's probably it as far as I'm concerned for track presets. There's some useful sounds in there, say particularly if you've got plenty of content, because there's various things which have come with track presets in the past. And it's nice to experiment with some of those sounds because it can just give you that instant bit of inspiration rather than loading up a bunch of effects and EQ and channel strip settings, etc. But the main use for me for track presets is to allow me to effectively create my own presets of things that I've done, which either mean that I have a good starting point and a flexible way of creating effectively templates, or to transfer the settings which I've manually created from one project to multiple other projects. So particularly working at the moment, I'm getting a lot of stuff in remotely, and it may be that every time I get the tracks recorded by a particular drummer, I'm pretty much doing the same things. Obviously, that will get fine-tuned when you come down to putting it in the song itself, but having a starting point for that is often a quick way to get a mix up and running so that the client can decide whether the playing's right for them, etc. And that's what we're going to look at now, using track presets to create your own and transport your sounds between different projects and different mixes. So here we have a typical example set up. So I've got some drums which have been recorded in a drummer's studio. So he's just got a fairly simple setup of kick, snare, and then a couple of Glyn Johns style overheads. And for a hastily improvised setup, which he's used during lockdown, this has worked reasonably well, but the tracks nearly always need some production doing to them because he's not a recording engineer. And these are generally kind of demo tracks rather than final pieces of work. So each one of these, in this case, you can see this track has got some EQ applied to it, channel strip, and some inserts as well. And then if we move to the next track, you can see there's been some there with some no EQ in this case, and then some EQ, etc. applied to the overheads. To save having to do this again and again, these just get saved as track presets. So let's take a look at doing that. So back on the kick, I can click here and then click Save Track Preset. So in this case, I'm going to call it Bob HS for home studio kick. And that's all I'm going to call it. Same for the snare. Bob HS snare. and save that. And finally, for the overheads, save those as well. So Bob, HS, overhead. Now these are actually going to a group, and we're going to save the group channel settings as well, even though there's not much on there at the moment, but you'll get the idea because it allows you to just recreate this really quickly. So again, save track preset, Bob, HS, group. Now, whenever I get tracks from the drummer with the same setup, I can just load these instantly. You can see how quick it is to do this, because if I zero the board effectively, so if I just reset the mixer, let's just reset those selected channels, and you can see they are now as they were originally, and it's quick and easy to load these up. So as if this was a new project, I can just load track preset, and in this case I'll just put in Bob because I know it's Bob I'm dealing with, and load up Bob kick, and we're done. Same for the next one. And you get the pattern now. And finally, let's load up the group. And we're good to go. The last thing we'll need to do is just to route these 3 channels over to that group. We're exactly where we were before, with the drums set up and ready to be played around with further to fit the session. So that's actually my main use for track presets, is building up my own library of sounds and effects, etc., and processing, which I use particularly on tasks that I do regularly. So if I'm working with the same client, I will tend to build up some sounds that they like. So if they've got a particular vocal sound that they liked on a given track, or maybe they want to use it on their backing tracks all the time, then it's just ready. It's quick and easy to load up. You always want to fine tune it for the track in question, but often you want to be able to try things out quickly and say, how does this work, etc. And then instead of it taking you 5 minutes to remember which plugin you were using, you just go, right, there we go. There's the track preset. This is okay or not okay. And then you can work from there. It also means you can remain consistent across, let's say, album projects. You can load up the same drum sound, give or take, and know that your starting point is where you want it to be. And then again, you just fine tune it to suit the particular situation. When I'm working on my own, I tend to use a similar structure of group channels and so on. So I use a track preset for that. I also use a track preset for the master output, even though it's only got a few plugins. And at the moment, typically it will have listen to for remote listening for the client in question. It's useful just to be able to load that up in one click rather than 5 or 6. Makes life much easier, particularly because all of the plugin settings are loaded as well as the plugin itself. So it's definitely worth spending just a bit of time saving those sounds that you like, saving presets, etc., and spending just a bit of time thinking about how you're going to label them so you can recall them quickly, because it's no good having a preset that's amazing if you can't remember what you called it, etc. Anyway, as ever, hopefully you found this video useful, and if you have, please like and subscribe, and we'll see you again soon for more Music Tech Tuition.